This is the Music Halls of Fame podcast, episode 37. This week, we honor the year 2012 along with a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of 2012. We also look at the artists who will be eligible for induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for the first time next year. And our Spotlight Hall of Fame is the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum in Nashville, Tennessee. This podcast celebrates those who have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We'll also look at the case for certain artists to be inducted into the Hall who aren't there yet. Plus, every week we'll discuss a different musical Hall of Fame, Walk of Fame, or museum and celebrate someone who's been inducted into them. Let's start with our main focus of the podcast, which is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Hall Foundation was established on April 20th, 1983. Former Atlantic Records chairman Ahmet Ertegun was the head of the foundation at the time. 3 years later, a committee chose Cleveland, Ohio to be the site of the physical location for the museum over Detroit, Michigan, New York City, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Memphis, Tennessee, and Cincinnati, Ohio. I say physical location because members have actually been inducted into the hall since 1986, before the building was even opened. Cleveland was chosen because of what DJ Alan Freed did to promote rock and roll, including mainstreaming the phrase rock and roll, which was originally black slang for sex, and for also holding the first rock and roll concert. Ground was broken for the building on June 7, 1993. It opened on September 1, 1995 at 1100 Rock and Roll Boulevard on the shore of Lake Erie. The hall gets over 400,000 visitors a year on average. Normal hours of operation are between 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. except for Thursdays when they're open until 9 p.m. They are normally open later in the summer months. General admission at the moment is $30. Children 6 through 12 are $20. College students, first responders, military members, and Northeast Ohio residents are $25, and kids 5 and under, Hall of Fame members, and Cleveland residents are free. ID is required to get the discounts. Rockhall.com is their website. That's rockhall.com. And as with all places these days due to COVID restrictions, check with the website for updated information and hours. The year was 2012. The average cost of a new home was $263,200. Average monthly rent was $1,045. A gallon of gas cost $3.91, and a movie ticket, $8.20. Ah, the good old days. President Barack Obama won re-election for president after beating Mitt Romney. Hurricane Sandy devastated the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut coastlines, causing large parts of New York City to be in complete darkness for almost a week. The Costa Concordia cruise ship sank in Italy due to a reckless captain who also abandoned the ship before all of the passengers made it off the boat safely. 32 people were killed in the disaster. There were 2 major mass shootings in 2012 that still resonate with people to this day. The first one happened during a screening of the movie The Dark Knight Rises in Aurora, Colorado. 12 people were killed and 58 people were injured. In Newtown, Connecticut, 27 people, the vast majority of them kids under the age of 8, were killed by a gunman at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The Encyclopedia Britannica printed its last print edition after doing so for 226 years. Felix Baumgartner skydived from a balloon 24 miles above the New Mexico desert, breaking the sound barrier in the process and making him either the bravest or dumbest person on the planet. You decide. Also, the Mayan calendar ended on December 21st, 2012, which meant that the world ended and you're all either in heaven or hell, depending on if you like this podcast or not. I'm not sure which one actually owns my copyrights. You know, I just love stupid end of the world theories. Here's one. My calendar ends on December 31st, and you know what that means. The world will end. Or it's just time for me to buy a new calendar. I mean, people literally thought that the world was going to end because the Mayans ran out of space for a calendar. Seriously, that happened. Famous people who actually passed away in 2012 include actors Andy Griffith, Michael Clark Duncan, Ernest Borgnine, Richard Dawson, Jack Klugman, Chad Everett, Peter Breck, Ben Gazzara, Johnny Lewis, Ron Palillo, Sage Stallone, Charles Durning, Sherman Hemsley, Alex Karras, Larry Hagman, Don Grady from the original Mickey Mouse Club, George Lindsay, comedian Phyllis Diller, film director and writer Nora Ephron, film director Tony Scott, soldier Basil L. Plumley, conservative media business owner Andrew Breitbart, football player Junior Seau, boxer Hector Macho Camacho, painter Thomas Kincaid, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Sally Ride, Rodney King, whose beating by Los Angeles cops and the not guilty verdict against the cops led to the Los Angeles riots in 1992, Trayvon Martin, whose death stirred the past decade's social justice movements, writer Ray Bradbury, serial killer Israel Keyes, automaker Carol Shelby, gangsters Henry Hill and Griselda Blanco, baseball player Gary Carter, reporter Mike Wallace, disgraced Penn State college coach Joe Paterno, writer Gore Vidal, and Nazi death camp guard John Demjanjuk. The Nobel Peace Prize went to the European Union for advancing peace and human rights in Europe. U.S. President Barack Obama was named Time Magazine's Person of the Year for the second time. Channing Tatum was named People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, and Mila Kunis was named Esquire Magazine's Sexiest Woman Alive. In technology, Windows 8 was released. Facebook bought Instagram. Facebook held its IPO, but it didn't go well, at least at first. Bet a lot of people wish that they had gotten Facebook stock at $35 back then. Apple got into a patent war with Samsung. The first Twitter war happened in real time as Israeli and Palestinian forces tweeted insults back and forth while Israel was invading the Gaza Strip. And Mega Upload founder Kim.com was arrested for piracy. In video gaming, 2012 was the year that the PlayStation Vita and the Nintendo Wii U were released. It was also the year that some really popular games like Mass Effect 3, Borderlands 2, Sleeping Dogs, Alan Wake, BioShock 2, Resident Evil 6, Final Fantasy 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, The Walking Dead, Xenoblade Chronicles, Mark of the Ninja, and Dishonored were all released. In books, the 50 Shades of Grey series was very popular, as was the Hunger Games series, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Bill O'Reilly's Killing Kennedy and Killing Lincoln, Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl, Walter Isaacson's Steve Jobs biography, and Chris Kyle's American Sniper. In film, it was the year of the first Avengers movie, The Hunger Games, and the continuation of the Lord of the Rings saga with the prequel, The Hobbit. At the Academy Awards, Argo won Best Picture, Ang Lee won Best Director for Life of Pi, Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor for Lincoln, Jennifer Lawrence won Best Actress for Silver Linings Playbook, and Christoph Waltz won Best Supporting Actor for Django Unchained, while Anne Hathaway won Best Supporting Actress for Les Miserables. On the music front, Skyfall by Adele won Best Original Song, and Life of Pi won Best Film Score. In television in 2012, there were not a lot of big debuts. Veep and Chicago Fire were the two standouts. Shows leaving the scene in 2012, including Selena Gomez's Wizards of Waverly Place, iCarly, CSI Miami, House, and Gossip Girl, all of which have either been rebooted or will be rebooted because Hollywood has run out of ideas. The top shows of the year were NCIS Los Angeles, Sunday Night Football, The Big Bang Theory, Person of Interest, Dancing with the Stars, American Idol, 2.5 Men, and The Voice. At the Emmy Awards, Modern Family won Best Comedy, and Homeland won Best Drama. In sports, the Summer Olympics took place in London, England, making sports heroes out of, among others, swimmer Michael Phelps. In Russia, a plane carrying the Russian hockey team Lokomotiv Yaroslavl crashed, killing all except for a crew member. One hockey player initially survived the crash, but later passed away. The New York Giants won the Super Bowl, which was held for the 2012 season in New Orleans. The halftime entertainment was Beyoncé with a special reunion of Destiny's Child. Alabama won the NCAA College Football Championship. The San Francisco Giants won baseball's World Series. The University of Kentucky won the NCAA Men's College Basketball Championship. Baylor won the NCAA Women's College Basketball Championship. The Miami Heat won the NBA Championship, and the Indiana Fever won the WNBA Championship. I'll Have Another won the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness Stakes, but lost the Belmont Stakes to Union Rags. Bradley Wiggins won the Tour de France, and in hockey, the Los Angeles Kings won Hockey Stanley Cup, and the Rochester Nighthawks won the Major Indoor Lacrosse Championship. In golf, Bubba Watson won the Masters Golf Tournament, Ernie Els won the British Open, Webb Simpson won the U.S. Open, and Rory McIlroy won the PGA Championship. On the ladies' side, Sung Young Woo won the Kraft Nabisco Championship, Shan Shan Feng won the LPGA Championship, Na Yeon Choi won the U.S. Women's Open, and Jie Shin won the Women's British Open. In tennis, Victoria Azarenka won the Australian Open, Maria Sharapova won the French Open, and Serena Williams won Wimbledon and the U.S. Open. On the men's side, Novak Djokovic won the Australian Open, Rafael Nadal won the French Open, Roger Federer won Wimbledon, and Andy Murray won the U.S. Open. In soccer, Spain won the European Championship, and Chelsea won the FA Cup and Champions League. In National Soccer League Championships, Manchester United won in England, Real Madrid won in Spain, Montpellier won in France, Juventus won in Italy, Borussia Dortmund won in Germany, and Los Angeles won America's MLS Cup. In late 2012, it was announced that a new women's soccer league would form, with the first games being played in 2013. In motorsports, Brad Keselowski won the NASCAR Championship, Sebastian Vettel won the Formula One Championship, and Ryan Hunter-Reay won the IndyCar Championship. In music, the best-selling album of the year was a holdover from 2011. It was Adele's 21. Other best-selling albums of the year included Taylor Swift's Red, Frank Ocean's Orange, Ed Sheeran's Plus, One Direction's Up All Night, and also their album Take Me Home. Mumford & Sons' Babel, as hipster folk rock ruled that year. Justin Bieber's Believe, Carrie Underwood's Blown Away, Jason Aldean's Night Train, Luke Bryant's Tailgates and Tan Lines, and Lionel Richie's Tuskegee, the last four albums being country, which was also a huge music genre that year. Got Ye and Kimbria had the biggest single of the year with Somebody That I Used to Know. Other top songs were Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe, Taylor Swift's We Are Never Ever Ever Getting Back Together, Maroon 5's Payphone, Rihanna's Diamond, Fun's We Are Young, Nicki Minaj's Starships, The Lumineers' Ho Hey, Flo Rida's Wild Ones, and Kanye West's Mercy. Famous artists who passed away in 2012 included singers Whitney Houston, Jenny Rivera, Etta James, Bob Welsh, jazz master Dave Brubeck, Donna Summer, Davy Jones of the Monkees, Levon Helm of the band, Robin Gibb of the Bee Gees, Dick Clark from American Bandstand, rapper MCA Adam Yauch of the Beastie Boys, and entertainer Andy Williams. At the Grammy Awards, Mumford & Sons won Album of the Year for Babel. Got Ye and Kimbria won Record of the Year for Somebody That I Used to Know. Fun won Song of the Year for We Are Young, and they also won Best New Artist. At the Eurovision Singing Contest that was held in Azerbaijan, Loreen from Sweden won for the song Euphoria. And at the Tony Awards, Once won Best Musical, and Porgy and Bess won Best Revival of a Musical. In 2012, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted some backup bands. They inducted Gene Vincent's band, the Blue Caps, Bill Haley's band, the Comets, Buddy Holly's band, the Crickets, Hank Ballard's band, the Midnighters, Smokey Robinson's vocal group, the Miracles, and James Brown's group, the Famous Flames. They inducted Cosimo Matassa, Tom Dowd, and Glyn Johns into the Award for Musical Excellence category. The Hall inducted manager and music publisher Don Kirshner into the non-performer category, and Freddie King into the early influencers category. The Hall also inducted the Faces/Small Faces, Laura Nyro, Guns N' Roses, Donovan, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and this next group into their performers category. Adam Ad Rock Horowitz was a boy from Manhattan who played punk rock music as a kid. When guitarist John Barry quit a different punk rock band called the Young Aborigines, Adam joined that band. And as time went on, this new band changed its sound from punk to a new form of music called hip-hop. They originally had three guys, Adam Ad Rock Horowitz, Michael Mike D. Diamond, and Adam MCA Yauch, and a girl. But the girl, Kate Schellenbach, left the group and is now the drummer for Luscious Jackson, who had one major hit of their own called Naked Eye. I digress, though. The rest of this hip-hop band went on to have massive careers and are now members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that band is the Beastie Boys. The Beasties experimented with hip-hop and put out an EP called Cookie Puss, whose title track was them prank calling a Carvel ice cream store. Listen, you gotta get your entertainment from somewhere. Because Cookie Puss did so well, the band decided to go into hip-hop full-time, which is what led to Kate leaving the band in the first place. The group hired a DJ for their shows named Rick Rubin, who went to New York University. Rick decided to go into producing and got another friend from NYU named Russell Simmons to form a record label with him. They called it Def Jam Records. When that was formed, the first group Rick wanted on it was the Beastie Boys. The group recorded their debut album, which they were going to call something with a homophobic name, but that idea was blissfully killed. The group also did something that at the time wasn't too popular. Usually, an artist will put out one, possibly two lead singles from an album before releasing the entire thing. The Beasties released three. They started with Hold It Now in April of 1986, then released Paul Revere. A week before they released their album, now called License to Ill, they released The New Style. And then 1 month after that, the group released the song and music video that would break things wide open for them, You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party. Once that song came out and the video made heavy rotation on MTV, it was off to the races. The group also released Brass Monkey, Girls, and No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which featured a guitar solo from Kerry King from Slayer, who Rick was producing at the same time he was producing the Beastie Boys. The album became one of the fastest-selling albums of all time, eventually selling over 10 million certified copies in America alone. The importance of the album to hip-hop cannot be understated. It became the first hip-hop album to hit #1 on Billboard's album chart. It also helped to get hip-hop played on MTV, which was finally warming up to the idea that hip-hop wasn't a fad at that point. The Beasties, along with Run DMC, not much later, made hip-hop cool for suburban kids to listen to. Vanilla Ice and MC Hammer a few years later would water down hip-hop just enough for better or for worse, so it would be cool for suburban mothers to listen to it, thus completing hip-hop's rise in pop culture to accepted status. After that album came classics like Paul's Boutique, Ill Communication, Hello Nasty, Check Your Head, and To the Five Boroughs, with singles like So What, So What, So What You Want, Sabotage, and Intergalactic. On the night of the group's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012, one member was missing, Adam MCA Yauch. Unbeknownst to the general public at the time, MCA was in the final stages of cancer on that date. He passed away not long afterwards. Presented for induction by Chuck D of 2013 Hall inductees Public Enemy and 2021 Hall inductee LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, class of 2012. Before we look at this week's case for putting an artist into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, let's look and see exactly how artists are normally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The criteria for being inducted into the Hall was originally that, quote, artists had to have released their first record 25 years earlier and have created music whose originality, impact, and influence has changed the course of rock and roll, end quote. That interpretation has been updated in recent decades to include music that rock and roll influenced, like reggae, country, and hip-hop, and also youth culture that music has influenced and vice versa. That's why hip-hop artists get to be inducted now. The different categories that people can be inducted for are for musical excellence, which is for artists, musicians, songwriters, and producers who have had a dramatic impact on music. Also, early influencers, whose music influenced rock and roll and youth culture like jazz and the blues. The Ahmet Ertegun Award is also given out, which is named for famed record executive Ahmet Ertegun and goes to a non-performer who has had an impact in music, like record executives and managers. There's also a category that inducted songs that have influenced music, like the Troggs' Wild Thing or Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs' Woolly Bully. But of course, the most popular category is the performer category, which has had everybody in it from Elvis Presley to Tina Turner. The different nominating committees decide who will make the official ballots for that year. Then the ballots are sent to 1,000 musicologists, executives, performers, and other experts. The fans also get a chance to vote, with that vote usually being held on the Hall's website, rockhall.com. Then from that, the final inductees are chosen. Now, with all that being said, let us look at the case for this week's entry. It's that time of the year when we start to think ahead to next year's class of inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. As such, here is the list of artists who will be eligible for induction for the first time next year. Remember, in order to be considered, the artist has to have had put out an album at least 25 years ago. That means that you can all start to feel old now because you'll recognize a lot of these artists who are 98 Degrees, Alkaline Trio, All Saints, the Ataris, Atmosphere, the Avalanches, the Bacon Brothers, Badly Drawn Boy, Beta Band, Billy Myers, the Black Eyed Peas, Blackmore's Night, Blindside, Bright Eyes, the Buena Vista Social Club, The Bug, Children of Bodom, Creed, Days of the New, Derek Trucks, Destiny's Child, Devin Townsend, the Dillinger Escape Plan, the Donnas, Eagle Eye Cherry, Ed Guy, Embrace, 5 for Fighting, Flicker Stick, Flogging Molly, Forest for the Trees, Glassjaw, Godspeed You Black Emperor, Hammerfall, Hanson, Harvey Danger, Idlewind, Imogen Heap, Jamie Liddell, The KGB, Leanne Womack, Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, Limp Bizkit, Marcy Playground, Martha Wainwright, Matmos, Mew, The Microphones, Missy Misdemeanor Elliott, Morning Musume, Moss Deep, Mudvayne, Muse, The Music Tapes, Natalie Imbruglia, Nico Case, Newfound Glory, Nightwish, OAR, Of Montreal, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, whatever you want to call them these days, Pink Martini, Queens of the Stone Age, Sarah Evans, Seven Dust, Shadows Fall, Sia, Sigur Rós, Smash Mouth, Soil, Stereophonics, Swiss Cheese Incident, Switchfoot, Third Eye Blind, 1,000-Foot Crutch, Twisted, The Vehicle Birth, Will Smith, Within Temptation, and Wyclef Jean. Now, normally I would spend the next 5 or 6 weeks dissecting some of the artists who I think would stand the best chance of getting in, or at the very least getting nominated. I will say that I am a fan of some of these artists, like the Black Eyed Peas. They're never getting in, by the way. I'll save you even the dissection on that one. However, and I hate to say this, but this is probably by far the weakest class of first-time inductees that I have seen in a very long time in terms of who will eventually get into the Hall. Normally, there's more than a few artists who you know are automatic locks to get in eventually. Maybe not on the first ballot, but definitely in the next 5 years. I can't really say that about this list. In fact, out of this entire list, I'm going to say there's maybe 4, possibly 5 that might get in the next 5 years, and only 1 who I would probably put money on getting inducted in the next 5 years. This isn't a diss to any of the artists. All right, maybe 98 Degrees. I mean, really, that band was... There are artists who are popular and really good. Personally, I'm still rocking Third Eye Blind's debut album. Plus, I got nothing but love for Seven Dust, Natalie Imbruglia, and even P. Diddy, Sean Puffy, Combs, Puff Daddy, Pooh Doody, whatever. There's a big difference, though, between being popular and being hall-worthy. Still, I'll look at the cases for more than a few of these, actually, over the next 4, maybe 5 weeks, just to see if I'm right, and maybe there's a case to be made for them getting in by 2028. We're going to start with perhaps the artist with the strongest case for being nominated, and one who I would probably put my money on for getting in, Destiny's Child. Then we're going to look at Missy Elliott in a couple of weeks. In 3 weeks, we're going to look at Will Smith. And then, in about a month, I think we're going to look at Queens of the Stone Age. This week's Spotlight Hall of Fame is the Country Music Hall of Fame. The Country Music Hall of Fame is located at 222 Fifth Avenue South in Nashville, Tennessee. The Country Music Hall of Fame Museum was opened on April 1st, 1967, but they started inducting members into the hall in 1961. The museum has almost 200,000 recordings and an extensive collection of memorabilia, both in the museum itself and in their digital archives on their website at countrymusichallofame.org. The museum is one of Nashville's biggest attractions and is open daily from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Ticket prices are $25.95 for adults and $15.95 for kids 6 through 12. Museum members and kids under 6 are admitted free. However, they still need to get tickets. Due to COVID restrictions, of course, check their website for more information, as you now have to reserve your tickets either via phone or on the website itself, because this is the new era that we live in post-COVID. Handle it, people. I have always been a guy who likes to give people their flowers while they're around to enjoy them. It always seems stupid to say something nice about someone when they've passed away. After all, they're not around to appreciate it, unless they're a ghost and they're standing over you. Better to let them know while they're still around and they're guaranteed to hear it. Unfortunately, this entire podcast is actually about giving flowers to people who have, for the most part, passed away. It is important, though, to still pay homage and to give respect to these artists, especially to someone who was underappreciated while they were alive. This next artist, I believe, fits the category of underappreciated. DeFord Bailey was born on December 14, 1899 in Smith County, Tennessee. His mother passed away when he was 1, so he ended up being taken care of by his aunt. As with a lot of people in the early part of the 20th century, DeFord caught polio. In DeFord's case, it was when he was 3 years old. Polio left him bedridden for a year or so, and while he was stuck in bed, he learned how to play the harmonica, which came in handy later on in his life. He would lay there and imitate the birds outside his window on it. Eventually, he recovered from polio, but it left him with back issues throughout his entire life and also stunted his growth. He ended up topping out at about 4 foot 10 inches. When he was 9 years old, his family moved closer to Nashville, Tennessee, in order to manage some of the local farms there. 10 years later, in 1918, the family moved directly into Nashville. At this point, DeFord was 20. He started performing in Nashville, doing gigs there, but not as a professional quite yet. It was also around this time that he earned the nickname the Harmonica Wizard because of his proficiency on the instrument. He also learned how to play the banjo, but was mainly known for the harmonica. Depending on whose story you're going with, his big break may or may not have been in 1925 on WDAD radio in Nashville. What's been officially documented is that he performed on WDAD in January of 1926 and on WSM radio in June of that year. The gigs on WSM radio were the ones that put him into the history books. WSM had a popular radio show at the time called WSM Barn Dance. On December 10, 1927, DeFord performed his song Pan American Blues, named after a famous railway of the time. Before he performed, the announcer said that the show and also the venue that the show was broadcasting from was doing a name change immediately, from Grand Opera to the Grand Ole Opry. Then DeFord performed, making him the first performer in the Grand Ole Opry. DeFord headed east to New York City for a little while to record for Brunswick Records in what became the first recorded harmonica solos put on record, then came back to Nashville to record for RCA Victor. Probably his most popular song was John Henry, which was so popular that RCA put it out on what they called the race and hillbilly labels, which was what R&B and country music were called back in the day. In fact, from 1927 to 1941, DeFord was not only one of the most popular artists on the Grand Ole Opry radio show, but artists like Bill Monroe and Roy Acuff took DeFord on tour with them. In 1941, a licensing disagreement occurred between the two music licensing companies of the time, BMI, or Broadcast Music Incorporated, and ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. The result of this conflict was that radio stations were afraid to let performers perform certain songs for fear that they would end up paying a lot of money for the rights or getting into some very heavy litigation at that time. Think about it as the equivalent of getting a takedown notice from YouTube or Instagram for playing restricted music. What this meant for DeFord was that a lot of his music fit this category, so WSM Radio let him go rather than pay whatever fees that they would have had to have paid at that time. It, in effect, put an end to his career since he rarely did any touring. In order to survive, DeFord had a shoeshine stand and also rented rooms in his house. In 1974, the Grand Ole Opry did a special show to celebrate their move from the Ryman Auditorium to their new home at the Grand Ole Opry House. DeFord performed at the show, and the night became so popular that they decided to do a regular old-timers show. He played at the Opry only a few more times, including for his 75th birthday in 1974 and in 1982. Not long before he passed away on July 2nd, 1982, in Nashville at the age of 82. As with a lot of people, the world of entertainment gave DeFord his flowers long after he passed away. Over 20 years later, the Nashville Public Television station released a documentary about DeFord's life, which renewed interest in him. Later in 2005, the Country Music Hall of Fame inducted him in, making DeFord the Hall's first African-American performer to be inducted. A little late to give the man the respect and admiration that he deserved in life, and to this day, I still don't think that he gets the respect for what he accomplished in an era where it was not easy to be an African-American entertainer of any genre by any stretch of the imagination. He should be held in high esteem and celebrated in both the black and white communities, and yet his name is only mentioned in a trivia question, who was the first performer of the Grand Ole Opry. That's a shame. Give those flowers while people are still around to enjoy them, people. Always remember that. The harmonica wizard, the great DeFord Bailey, inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville, Tennessee in 2005. And that is it for the Music Halls of Fame podcast, episode 37. Thanks for listening. Audio engineering and editing, video editing, writing, narration, basically everything having to do with this podcast is done by yours truly. You can find us on our website at cjbtproductions.com. Our podcast is on all of your favorite podcast providers such as Apple Music, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Spotify, etc., all under Music History Today. If you would like to support this podcast, our Patreon can be found at patreon.com/Music History Today. We are also on Twitter at Music History Day, and you can now find us on YouTube. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell anytime you want to know exactly what videos are dropped and when. All of those links can be found in the show notes below. Thank you very, very much for listening.